For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. McLean, seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 499, I call up the bill H.R. 4, the Rescissions Act of 2025, and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 4, a bill to rescind certain budget authority, proposed to be rescinded in special messages transmitted to the Congress by the President on June 3, 2025, in accordance with Section 1012A of the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974.
Pursuant to House Resolution 499, the bill is considered read. The bill shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the majority leader and the minority leader or their respective designees. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McLean, and the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Mrs. DeLauro, each will control 30 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McLean.
Mr. Speaker, I request that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks, including extraneous material on the same measure under consideration.
No objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield as much time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, I rise to voice my strong support for H.R. 4, the Rescissions Act of 2025. Last November, the American people sent a clear message to Washington. Stop wasting our tax dollars and get our fiscal house in order. The President and House Republicans heard the American people, and we heard them loud and clear. We're keeping our promises to end the waste, the fraud, and the abuse. This rescission package sends $9.4 billion back to the U.S. Treasury. That's $9.4 billion of savings that taxpayers won't see wasted. It's their money, Mr. Speaker. It's along with our One Big Beautiful Bill Act is the first of many important steps House Republicans are taking to rein in wasteful spending. In 2024, the federal government spent over $1.8 trillion, and that's in just discretionary spending. The rescissions are only addressing 0.5% of that total. Democrats would consider this a rounding error. This administration has spent months combing through our federal budget, line by line, identifying waste, fraud, and abuse, and let me tell you, there is a lot. I think the American people would be hard-pressed, or anyone would be hard-pressed to say that the government runs so efficiently that we can't find any more efficiencies. But don't let the fear-mongering from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle fool you. Those claiming that this rescissions will harm people in other countries, I'm going to say that again, those Democrats saying that these rescissions will harm people in other countries are missing the point. It's about people in our country being put first. It is about putting Americans first. What a concept. Because American citizens support ending the waste, the fraud, and the abuse in places like USAID. A yes vote today will stop wasteful spending on programs like $500,000 for electric buses in Rwanda, $4 million for a bean system research, $67,000 for feeding insect powder to children in Madagascar. Again, okay, $3 million for Iraqi Sesame Street. I mean, Lord knows the Iraqi children need a little big bird in their life, right? It's a good use of $3 million taxpayer monies. I might want to use that $3 million on maybe some homeless vets or something like that. But anyways, how about we take some of that cash back? $4 million for sedentary migrants in Colombia. Seems like an oxymoron, but $2.5 million for teaching young children, get this, how to make environmentally friendly reproductive health decisions. Scratch my head on that one. $833,000 for services for transgender people, sex workers and their clients and sexual networks in Nepal. Yeah, the list goes on and on. I'm sort of embarrassed to read it. But Americans know the federal government is wasting money. And they're wasting Americans' taxpayer money. And House Republicans are going to stop wasting your tax dollars. It's really simple. Because we're focused on actually putting the American people first. You know, the American people in which whom we represent. Not whether the people in Zimbabwe have vegan food to eat, and not electric buses in Rwanda. This is what those on the other side of the aisle want to defend. The waste, the fraud, the abuse. They actually advocate for it. I urge my colleagues to join me in voting yes to end the insanity and actually put Americans first. Let's rescind wasteful spending. It's really simple. Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 5 minutes. I am opposed to this bill to aid and abet billionaires in stealing from the American people, and which does nothing to help the American people with the cost of living. Since taking office, President Trump and Elon Musk unlawfully have stolen funds appropriated by the Congress, passed by Republicans and Democrats in the House and in the Senate, signed into law by the President, upending the separation of powers and our constitutional order. For what ends? That's to hand billionaires and the biggest corporations who already pay little or no taxes, give them another massive tax break. It's $4.5 trillion of taxpayers. You want to talk about wasting taxpayers' dollars? This money is going to the wealthiest people and the biggest corporations. That's where you should save the money, to make our government so broken, so dysfunctional, so starved for resources, so full of incompetent political lackeys and bereft of experts and professionals that its departments and the agencies cannot feasibly achieve the goals and the missions to which they are lawfully directed. That's where we are going. And ultimately, to embrace privatization, to give the biggest companies unchecked power, to rig the economy against the middle class, workers, and vulnerable families, ensure the American people have no faith in the ability of government to do good in their lives. My colleagues, there is no inherent authority for the president to impound steal funds. There never has been. I don't care if the president is Republican or Democrat. The late Justices Scalia and Rehnquist said so. Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Kavanaugh have said so. And by the way, they are no liberal torchbearers. The Department of Justice and the Government Accountability Office have said so. Over 200 years of American history say so. Our founding fathers designed our government, said so. Alexander Hamilton said, and I quote, "But where there is the purse is lodged in one branch and the sword in another, there can be no danger. The power of the purse resides in the United States Congress." This rescissions package dated May 28th, submitted June 3rd, 134 days after the president began unlawfully freezing funding, is an admission by President Trump and Russ Vought that they are breaking the law by impounding $425 billion in appropriated funds across government. They do not care about the consequences for Americans. This is a bill to codify the right of billionaires, to rubber stamp the right of billionaires to steal from rural and vulnerable American communities, children, the global poor, for the sake of handing even more money to billionaires. Congress needs to fight for the middle class, for the working class, and the most vulnerable, not to protect the interests of billionaires and big corporations. Members considering voting for this own the reckless cut done by Elon Musk. This is a bill to shut down rural television and radio stations, cutting off coverage of local news, eliminating emergency information like severe weather alerts, jeopardizing access to PBS Kids' children program like Sesame Street. This is a bill to rip life-saving support away from the hungry, displaced, and sick people in developing countries and conflict zones across the globe, to end programs that treat deadly diseases and prevent pandemics. This is a bill to abandon the people of Ukraine while they resist Putin's tyranny. This is a bill to cut $400 million from PEPFAR, a paragon of American leadership, saved 26 million lives, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters. Instead of facing a death sentence, people supported by PEPFAR are raising families, building their communities, helping their communities grow and develop it. This bill puts America last. When we retreat from the world diplomatically and through our assistance to vulnerable people, America will be alone, without allies, in a less stable world, without the support of the international community. And do you know who will come out ahead? China, Russia, Iran. When people in need see bags of food and flour coming that say USA, that shows the power of the United States. That now will be traded for food aid from China. We are here today considering cuts after months of unlawful impoundment stealing that will conceal a Republican reconciliation bill to make the billionaires in America even more rich. Increase the debt by $3 trillion, you increase the debt. You rip health insurance away from at least 16 million Americans. This bill rescinds $9.4 billion, which Congress just appropriated not even 3 months ago. And now the President is asking the Congress to rubber stamp its proposal to steal from the American people without concern for the consequences. This bill does nothing to help the American people with the cost of living. The President said he was going to bring it down on the first day. It's done nothing but made it worse. I strongly urge my colleagues, oppose this bill. It forfeits our global leadership. It undermines national security, steals from the American people to hand more wealth to billionaires. Thank you, and I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to make sure we're talking about the rescissions.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities toward the President. From Michigan is now recognized.
I just want to clarify, we are having a debate on the rescissions package, correct, Mr. Speaker? Anyways, Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute from the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Mast.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. Yeah, I could use my minute for a number of things, but I think I'm going to use it now to apologize to all of you in the gallery. I'm sorry. You just literally had to listen to somebody lying to all of you directly. How many times did she say the word billionaire? How many times did she try to say that she was trying to do something, we're trying to do something to enrich billionaires? That's not taking place at all. We're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. Billions of dollars going to Canadian Lesbian Justice Foundation and transgender sex worker networks in Nepal and a whole list of things. I would say that among the definition of things that we could do to eliminate those programs would be the definition of saving the American taxpayer money. I'm going to leave it at that. They expect you to believe what they say and not believe what you can see with your own eyes. Let the American people be the judge of whether that's saving you money or whether that's enriching billionaires, ending programs like LGBTQI in the Caribbean and the Balkans and Uganda and all the dollars that we put into trying to support those programs. That is waste, fraud, and abuse. Our American tax dollars should not be spent in that way. I'm sorry that they're lying to you in this way, but we're going to work through all this and work to save you all money. Madam,
Gentleman's time's expired.
I yield you back the remainder of any time that I have. Sorry that you lied to, but you're going to expect to hear more of it.
The chair reminds members that the rules do not allow references to persons in the gallery.
I reserve.
From Michigan reserves. Gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Maine, the distinguished ranking member of the Interior and Environmental Subcommittee of Appropriations, Ms. Pingrid.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much to my good friend from Connecticut for yielding the time. I rise today in strong opposition to this reckless attack on public media contained within this rescission bill and the millions of Americans who rely on and treasure their local public television and radio stations. Every state will feel the impact of this $1.1 billion recession. In fact, 70% of these cuts will directly impact local public media stations, $770 million, including more than $4 million to my state alone. In rural states like Maine, local stations and networks like Maine Public are often the most accessible and sometimes the only source of news and information. Whether it's children's programs like Sesame Street and Daniel Tiger, high school basketball tournament coverage, or trusted news shows like Maine Calling, public media has been a vital part of Mainers' lives for generations. Speaking of lives, these stations literally saves lives. Wildfire evacuations, missing child alerts, winter storm warnings, which are pretty common in Maine. If there's an emergency in your town, chances are the local public media station is sounding the alarm and giving you the information you need to stay safe. The purpose of public media is to inform, educate, engage. It makes people's lives better and has undoubtedly made our country stronger. And this president wants nothing more than to destroy it. This is not about fiscal responsibility or finding waste, fraud, and abuse. Do you know how much these services cost per year? Less than $2, less than 1 cup of coffee. It's certainly not about cutting something people don't like. 70% of Americans support public media. In this political climate, that kind of consensus is unheard of. This is about one thing: the president's vendetta against the free press and his authoritarian desire to control the media. Public media enriches our lives, nourishes our minds, and makes our communities safer. It deserves to be preserved and protected, not gutted to score political points. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this rescission, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
The chair.
Gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. Gentlewoman from Michigan recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Iowa, Ms. Henson.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Washington status quo in November, demanding an end to unelected bureaucrats misusing taxpayer resources. President Trump's rescissions package cuts $9.4 billion, including $3 million for Iraqi Sesame Street, $6 million for net zero cities in Mexico, and $1 million for voter ID in Haiti, not here in the United States. We're only scratching the surface with this package, but imagine being able to redirect those dollars to veterans care or specialty crop programs in a state like mine. This package also rescinds funds for NPR and PBS. For decades, public broadcasting has not adhered to objectivity standards enshrined in law. It has pushed biased narratives and forced inappropriate content on children, like a movie celebrating the sex change of a child and a feature on the racial origins of fat phobia, whatever that means. Children should not be fed woke propaganda, certainly not on the taxpayer dime. That is coming from a former broadcaster. And I want to thank President Trump for exposing this waste and working to protect America's hard-earned dollars. I urge my colleagues to join me in passing this bill, and I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yield.
Gentlelady reserves.
The gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman
Mr. Speaker,
from Connecticut
I yield 1 minute to the
recognized.
gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you very much. If there was fraud, there'd be arrests. There's not fraud, there have not been arrests. You're depending on the word of Mr. Musk, who took out from the president of Argentina a chainsaw and waved it around, a chainsaw. He took a chainsaw to the budget, not a scalpel. You want to improve something, improve it. Kennedy Center, you want to improve it? You want hee-haw? Have hee-haw. But don't get rid of the Kennedy Center. There will be people who will die. This bill is good for Russia and China and undertakers because it's going to have people dying. Bill Gates said this is the richest man in the world, Musk, taking advantage of and killing the poorest children in the world. They're not going to be getting PEPFAR programs created by George Bush. They're not going to get sustenance that they need that's rotting in ships right now. Don't end it, mend it. This is a terrible bill. This is Musk's bill on drugs. I yield back.
Expired.
Reserve.
Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair. Please, sir. Gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman from Michigan, you're recognized.
I'll just remind you, fear-mongering at its best. I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Bean.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chair McLean. Mr. Speaker, I know there are budget hawks, and I know there are people that care about the deficit, which should be everybody in this room. I know they are getting impatient. They're wondering, when is the House going to finally take action and make the DOGE cuts official? The answer, Mr. Speaker, is today. Today is the day we take the first step in restoring fiscal discipline and getting our nation back on track. H.R. 4, the Rescissions Act of 2025, cuts unnecessary spending and ensure tax dollars are not wasted on reckless foreign aid. No more tax dollars to fund DEI programs in Serbia. No more tax dollars to fund DEI musicals in Ireland. No more tax dollars to fund electric vehicles in Vietnam. Taxpayers, Mr. Speaker, you know, have said enough is enough. I say enough is enough. Let's pass this bill, Mr. Speaker, and let's go get them. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired.
Gentlelady reserves.
Gentlelady reserves.
Speaker,
The gentlelady from Connecticut is
sorry.
recognized.
I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Jayapal.
Recognized, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This rescissions package is all about going back on the agreements that Republicans just made in March. It's about the fact that Congress had approved this funding before Elon Musk took a literal chainsaw, an illegal chainsaw, to foreign aid and public broadcasting and a whole bunch of other things that Americans care about. And then guess what? The court said no. So now Trump has ordered his minions here in this House to go back on their own agreements and undermine your own authority to appropriate money, all so that they can legitimize his sometimes shadow president, Elon Musk. This is yet another betrayal bill. It slashes USAID funding even more, and the cuts have already killed 300,000 people across the world. It will kill even more. It destroys our global leadership, and it's yet another attack on free speech in our country by slashing money for public TV and broadcasting that are many Americans' only source of news, weather, and children's programming. Vote no on this bill. It is another betrayal. I yield back.
Time's expired. Reserves. Gentleman from Michigan.
That we can have free speech in America. The government just doesn't need to fund it. But with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Mesmer.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 4, the Rescissions Act of 2025. For decades, Americans have been waiting for their leadership to deliver on the promise that fiscal responsibility was on its way. Wasteful spending of taxpayer dollars have been overlooked for far too long, and for far too many years, leaders have kicked the can down the road, hoping a future Congress would make the hard decisions required to stop the financial bleeding. As a proud Hoosier, I know that if we are doing our best to live within our means of our family, the government should do no less. Congress must deliver on the promise of safeguarding American taxpayer dollars, and I'm proud to vote today to make this first initial step to eliminate wasteful government spending. The Department of Government Efficiency did our country a great service in lifting the veil on how much fraud, abuse, and terrible waste of taxpayer dollars is truly happening in our government agencies. By passing the Rescissions Act today, I join my colleagues in showing Americans that we hear them and we know that this change must be made. It's high time we work toward getting our fiscal house in order, and this is the first step. I yield back for the remainder of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves?
I reserve.
Okay. Gentlewoman for
Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from New York, the distinguished ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mr. Meeks.
Gentleman's recognized.
I want to thank the ranking member for allowing me to speak. Mr. Speaker, this recessions package isn't about fiscal responsibility. It's about abandoning America's legacy of compassion, ceding global leadership, and turning our back on the most vulnerable. The president's demand to slash $8.3 billion in life-saving foreign assistance is plunging America deep into moral bankruptcy. Because despite what Secretary Rubio and others have falsely claimed, cuts to U.S. foreign assistance have caused unnecessary deaths around the world. And the cuts in this rescissions package, based on outright lies, will cost many more lives. Now, maybe they don't care about lives, but I think we have a moral obligation that we should. And my Republican colleagues should know better. Why? Just months ago, they voted for this funding. They understood, and I believe they understand now, if they would tell the truth, that we all should and all know that foreign assistance is smart policy and a national security imperative. Rescinding these funds now will have a real and immediate consequences. This package cuts $400 million from PEPFAR. These aren't Democratic pet projects, as some would have you believe. PEPFAR was established by President George W. Bush and saved more than 26 million lives while slowing the spread of HIV/AIDS around the world. Cutting these kinds of funds is another death sentence for children and women who depend upon our life-saving medication that cost us just pennies. It cuts $1.3 billion from humanitarian assistance, while over 300 million people around the world urgently need food, shelter, and Medicare. These aren't abstract numbers. These are real lives that are at stake. It also, and to justify these cuts, the president has misled the public about the very agencies carrying them out. Take USAID, for example. It has never failed an audit, never been found out of compliance with laws or regulations. In 2022, it ranked third among 9 federal agencies for evidence-based budgeting and decision-making. Now let's contrast that. Contrast that with the Department of Defense, who's getting more money. The Department of Defense, which has failed its audit 7 years in a row. Failed their audit. So if this was truly about waste, fraud, or abuse, we'd be having a lot different conversation here this afternoon. This package also slashes funding for UNICEF, which works to protect children around the world and means yanking more than 40 million kids out of school. It eliminates programs that helps almost 4 million people have clean drinking water. This package hands, who's excited about this package? I can tell you who's excited about it. China, Russia, North Korea, Iran. They're excited about this package because they would love to do this themselves if they could, because they know that that takes away who we are in our relationships, and then they will try to jump in. They are laughing. They are happy because they see us surrendering, because that's what this is. This is a surrender. We cannot be fooled by this budget talk. You know what? Look at it. These funds really are less than 1% of our overall federal budget. Less than 1%. Meanwhile, if you look at what the Trump administration and our GOP colleagues are doing, they are actually adding deficits of trillions of dollars to do what? To give tax breaks to billionaires. So this is not really about fiscal restraint. This is about saving lives, is what we should be talking about. Those billions of dollars that they're going to get in tax cuts is not going to change the lives of those billionaires. Let us reject this bill, this recession bill. Let us vote no and restore the money to save lives.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute from the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Harris.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Speaker, if we can't unite and say no to exporting transgender ideology abroad, if we can't say no to taxpayer-funded left-wing propaganda, and we can't say no to funding pet projects that put America last, then what is the point of being called a Republican? Mr. Speaker, I rise today to urge my colleagues to defund NPR, PBS, and USAID. For decades, Republicans have campaigned on being fiscal conservatives, but all we have to show for it is a national debt skyrocketing towards $37 trillion. Let me be clear. There is nothing fiscally conservative about forcing taxpayers to fund vegan food promotion in Zambia, voter ID in Haiti. We were sent here to do government differently, and nothing could be a clearer test of our commitment than to pass this rescission package. The time to act is today. If we continue on our track, our grandchildren will be enslaved to a debt that will dwarf our current monstrosity. And Mr. Speaker, with that, I yield back my time.
Ms. Time's expired.
I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, the distinguished Democratic whip, Ms. Clark.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sunday is Father's Day, and what do dads want? They want a fair shot. They want to know if they work hard, they can provide for their families. But right now, most families in America can't even afford the basics. 60% of families in the richest nation on earth cannot afford the first rung of the American dream. So what are my Republican colleagues doing about that? They voted for a big, ugly bill that makes it even harder to raise a child in America, takes away health care from 16 million Americans, takes food benefits from working parents. They're cutting $500 billion from Medicare, and they're hiking costs of everyday items with their tariffs, all to fund tax breaks for the billionaire class. That alone is a betrayal of working families. But the GOP is not stopping there. They're not stopping at dismantling people's financial security. Today, they're threatening their physical security. Because when you defund public broadcasting, you are defunding emergency broadcasts. During hurricane season, tornado season, wildfire season. And that's not even enough. They have to take even more. Today, you are also voting to dismantle our national security. There are 3 shields that defend our homeland: defense, diplomacy, and development. When you destroy our capacity to address famine, control disease, and build infrastructure in developing nations, you are ceding our power to our rivals. You are planting the seeds of future wars. A prominent Republican said this week he just couldn't justify these investments. And in this debate, I have heard that this is about putting America first. What are you talking about? You just cut food programs and health care for American families. And here's what you fundamentally don't seem to understand. There is no security for billionaires in this country without security for a hungry child. There's no security for the ultra-rich donors without security for working parents. In the words of President Kennedy, if a free society cannot help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. Please vote no. I yield back.
Ms. Time's expired. Gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman's recognized from Michigan.
I yield 1 minute to my friend from Ohio, Mr. Jordan.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentlelady for yielding. This bill is real simple. Don't spend money on stupid things and don't subsidize biased media. I mean, there's all kinds of media that's biased that they can take care of themselves. MSNBC proves that every single day. Think about the NPR, the statement just made about NPR. We had a Uri Berliner, award-winning journalist who worked for NPR for over 20 years, decided NPR had lost its way and did ask a basic question. Basic question. What's the political affiliation for the editors for NPR in the Washington, D.C. area? And guess what he found? 87 editors, political affiliation, 87 Democrats, 0 Republicans. Not 44-43, not 50-37, not Not 60-27, 87-0. This bill simply says, stop subsidizing. They can make money on their own. All the other media outlets do it. And quit spending money, taxpayer money, hard-earned taxpayer money on stupid things. I urge a yes vote.
Gentleman's time expired.
I reserve.
She reserves. Woman from Connecticut, you're recognized.
Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New York, the distinguished Democratic leader, Mr. Jeffries.
Gentleman's recognized.
I thank the distinguished gentlelady from the great state of Connecticut for yielding and for her tremendous leadership in pushing back against this reckless Republican rescissions package. It's extraordinary to me that once again we're on the floor of the House of Representatives, not debating legislation that Republicans bring forward, Mr. Speaker, that is designed to lower the high cost of living in the United States of America, a promise that Republicans repeatedly made last year to the American people and now have repeatedly broken. Throughout this Congress, not a single bill has been brought to the House floor by my Republican colleagues that addresses the high cost of living in the United States of America. Not a single bill. House Republicans and President Trump promised that costs were going to go down in the United States of America. In fact, they said costs were going to go down on day one. But we know that costs haven't gone down in this great country, Mr. Speaker. Costs have gone up. And America is too expensive. Housing costs are too high. Grocery costs are too high. Utility costs are too high. Child care costs are too high. Insurance costs are too high. America is too expensive. And Republicans have decided that in the face of this affordability crisis in the United States of America, that they are going to undermine America's ability to protect our national security through the exercise of soft power and addressing in a bipartisan way the HIV and AIDS epidemic, a program that was first put into place by President George W. Bush and has saved the lives of millions of people across the world and, of course, people here at home by fighting against this epidemic. America is made safer when we are able to invest in diplomacy and development and democracy across the world, particularly in the face of aggressive efforts by China and Russia and other malignant actors to move the world in a different place. So this reckless Republican rescissions package will undermine America's national security, undermine public health here in this country and across the world. And it actually represents an attack on children. This is extraordinary to me. We're on the floor of the House of Representatives, not debating legislation that is designed to make this country and our economy more affordable, but actually debating legislation that targets Elmo and Big Bird and Daniel Tiger and Sesame Street. That's what we're doing by going after public broadcasting in the United States of America. Sesame Street has a letter of the day. I believe the letter of the day today is C. How appropriate. Because this Republican bill is cruel and it cuts children's programming all across the country. How can this be? That your priority right now as Republicans do nothing on the economy, nothing to make life more affordable, nothing to address the high cost of living. Instead, Republicans are attacking Elmo and Sesame Street and Big Bird and Daniel Tiger. Your priorities are all wrong. And this is on top of a GOP tax scam, Mr. Speaker, where Republicans are trying to visit on the American people the largest cuts to health care in American history, targeting Medicaid, Medicare, the Affordable Care Act, the Children's Health Insurance Program, and women's health by trying to defund Planned Parenthood. That's what Republicans in this Congress are trying to do through the GOP tax scam, this disgusting abomination, the one big ugly bill. And you're going after school lunch programs for children, supplemental nutritional assistance for children, and now children's programming. Doesn't suggest to me that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are actually trying to strengthen families. This legislation would weaken families, weaken our ability to lead throughout the free world, and weaken public health and safety for everyday Americans and people all across this country. And so, Mr. Speaker, I urge a no vote. And also, I'm hopeful that my colleagues at some point on the other side of the aisle will actually decide to focus on the issues that matter, to lift children up, not target them, to lift families up, not target them, to lift older Americans up, not target them, to lift veterans up, not target them, to lift health care for everyday Americans up and not target them. That's what House Democrats will continue to do on behalf of the American people. It's high time that our Republican colleagues join us. Vote no against this reckless Republican rescissions package. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves.
Reserve.
Gentlewoman from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr.
Recognized.
Speaker. Fear-mongering at its best, but I will reserve 1 minute for my friend, Mr. Davidson from the great state of Ohio.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. America's resources should always serve America's interests. 22 rescissions to wasteful foreign aid and biased media totaling $9.4 billion is a good start. I commend this legislation because the national debt, as it climbs towards $37 trillion, U.S. taxpayers deserve a government that serves them, not radical policies abroad or at home. The reality is the radical left has seized these institutions and wielded them for an agenda that doesn't serve America's interest. Wasted government revenues siphoned off the backs of Americans' tax dollars should not be tolerated. I commend the $1 billion rescission to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Taxpayer funding for woke media entities is absurd. NPR and PBS already have a business model that doesn't need to rely on 150 million Americans' taxed income. It does not need to promote any agenda, including their radical agenda, with stuff like what to do if you experience a microaggression or some other promotion of their agenda. Additionally, international institutions have abandoned their original missions to promote development in exchange for radical gender ideology and climate priorities. That's why I support the rescissions package and I urge support for the bill.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
Reserve.
Reserves. Gentlewoman from Connecticut.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Florida, the distinguished ranking member of the State and Foreign Operations Subcommittee, Ms.
Gentlewoman is
Frankel.
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Madam Ranking Chair of the Appropriations Committee. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in fierce opposition to the Republicans' reckless rescission bill, a backdoor scheme to claw back critical federal funding that protects America's global leadership, public safeguards, and trusted public broadcasting, all while bypassing congressional constitutional authority. Let's be clear, this is not a budget tweak. It's an attack on our values, a direct hit to our national health, safety, and prosperity, and a green light for authoritarian overreach. This package guts essential investments in international development and humanitarian programs life-saving tools that fight disease, prevent terrorism, supports democracy, and open markets for Americans' businesses. And here's the kicker, Mr. Speaker. Congress approved this funding just 2 months ago, and Donald Trump signed it into law. And now Republicans want to rip back the cover just to, I should say, cover up the massive hole they are blowing in the deficit with tax giveaways for billionaires. Their so-called fiscal responsibility comes at the expense of starving children, crumbling democracies, public-private partnerships that have changed American innovation to solve the world's toughest challenges. Foreign assistance, which has long represented just about 1% of our national budget, it's not charity, it's strategy. Don't take my word for it. Military leaders from both parties have warned us for years. If we fail to lead with soft power, we'll end up paying in blood, bombs, and more boots on the ground. Cutting foreign assistance will deepen desperation, fuel extremism, push fragile societies towards collapse. And when that happens, we all pay the price. Refugee crises surge, diseases spread, trade routes shut down, our troops and diplomats face greater danger, and our homeland security is weakened. And here's an example of what's on the chopping block. PEPFAR, which has saved over 26 million lives and nearly 8 million babies from being born with HIV. Food assistance, which stabilizes communities and creates agricultural markets. Public-private partnerships that channel American innovation to solve the world's toughest challenges. And let's talk what happens and what is happening when we pull back. When the United States steps away, others step in, and not with good intentions. China is flooding developing countries with infrastructure loans and digital surveillance systems. Russia is exporting mercenaries and disinformation. And why we're debating whether to send a bag of rice or a clean water pump, our adversaries are buying influence. They're forging military alliances and rewriting the rules of global engagement. It's not theoretical. This is happening right now. Take Africa, for example, a region poised to become, listen to this, 1/4 of the world's population. U.S. assistance has helped build stability there through nutrition programs, education, and public health. But if we walk away now, we're not just abandoning our values, we're surrendering one of the world's fastest growing marketplaces to China. So let's be clear. Regions we assist aren't just aid recipients, they're emerging economies and future trading partners. And pulling back the door opens these regions for authoritarian regimes like China to dominate the future commerce, connectivity, and development. This is not just cruel, it's strategically self-defeating and economically foolish. Make no mistake, this rescission package is Project 2025 in action, dismantling our institutions, silencing our oversight, and handing U.S. global leadership over to the dictators on a silver platter, leaving us alone in the world. And this bill attempts to rubber stamp the Trump administration's illegal actions, blocking funding already approved by Congress, firing career public servants, and hollowing our entire agencies. And let's be honest, this is not going to lower the cost for American families. It is not going to reduce the deficit, but it will make the world more dangerous, make Americans less safe. Just give me 30 seconds.
Gentlewoman's time's expired.
And make us less prosperous. I urge no on this bill.
Gentlewoman reserves.
I'm good.
The gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized.
I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Fine.
Gentleman recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I've heard from my colleagues on the other side that we should be focused on issues that matter, that we should be thinking about our kids. As I lay awake at night here in Washington, I've only been here a couple months, but as bad as I thought it was going to be, it is far worse. because Rome is burning. And too many people in this building say that's a great opportunity to roast marshmallows. See, the fact of the matter is if we can't make these cuts, which are as simple and as easy as you would think, $6 million to fund media in Gaza, funding PBS and NPR, even if it was a good idea, you can't do it when you're borrowing trillions of dollars a year. If we can't make these cuts, which should be the easiest imaginable cuts, then there's no hope for us. So I am grateful to my leadership for bringing this forward. I am grateful for President Trump doing it, but make no mistake, this is only the first step if we want to put out the fire. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman's time's expired.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Reserved. Gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Kelly.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you, Ranking Member DeLauro. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to President Trump's rescission package that steals $400 million from PEPFAR, a life-saving global health program. Let me remind my colleagues that PEPFAR is a bipartisan effort first led by Congresswoman Barbara Lee and signed by President George W. Bush. It has been reauthorized on a bipartisan basis 4 times. Right now, Republicans who are supportive of PEPFAR are calling the White House seeking assurances that it will be protected. Do not listen to the president's empty promises. Nothing in this bill protects PEPFAR. If I were to put it simply, PEPFAR saves lives. It has already saved 26 million lives. That's indisputable, and it should be enough to continue to fund one of the most successful global health programs in history. If I cannot appeal to my colleagues' humanitarian side, perhaps they will listen to all the ways PEPFAR serves American interests. PEPFAR is a cornerstone of global health progress and U.S. diplomacy. If Congress was to bow to President Trump's demands to pull PEPFAR, funding would leave gap. For this reason, I will offer a motion to recommit this bill back to committee if the House rules permit it. I would have offered the motion with an important amendment to this bill. My amendment would strike the PEPFAR rescission. I ask unanimous consent to insert this into the record.
Gentlewoman's time's expired. Gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. Gentlewoman from Michigan recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the sponsor of the bill, the gentleman from Louisiana, the majority leader of the House, Mr. Steve Scalise.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend, our conference chair, Ms. McLean, for managing this time on this important bill. And, Mr. Speaker, a lot of people come up here and they talk about trying to get America's fiscal house in order, about the idea of getting back to balanced federal budgets. I don't know many people here who are against it. I know when we later in this Congress put a bill on the floor to require a balanced federal budget, there will be many Democrats, Mr. Speaker, who will vote no on that, because when it comes time to actually put your votes on the board to back up the principles that most Americans relish, they walk away. They won't be there when it actually matters. You know, everybody can talk about cutting wasteful spending, and even if you don't necessarily agree that it's wasteful spending, and what we're bringing today is wasteful spending, but even if you think, okay, might not be as bad as some other things you don't agree with, we all have to agree, Mr. Speaker, that as we just saw a few weeks ago, Moody's downgrade the credit rating of the United States. Wasn't a recommendation, Mr. Speaker, wasn't a warning that, gee whiz, if you folks don't get your fiscal house in order, this might happen. They actually did it. They downgraded the credit rating of the United States because spending has to get under control. And the party over there that spent the last 4 years under President Biden spending like drunken sailors, and all due respect to drunken sailors, because they don't spend this bad. But the trillions of dollars of debt that were racked up had consequences, Mr. Speaker. It had consequences not only in terms of our national debt, it affected the pocketbooks of families all across America, because that spending, bloated spending in Washington, money we don't have, by the way, increased inflation to the point where people couldn't even go to the grocery store to fill up their carts. They couldn't afford to go to the gas station to fill up their cars. They couldn't afford to take out a loan to buy a house because interest rates had gotten so high that today we're spending more money servicing our interest than we are on America's national debt. These are all real, dramatic facts that concern most Americans. And they say, thank goodness, Congress is finally bringing a bill to the floor to start cutting some spending that aren't priorities. Call it wasteful if you want, call it whatever you want, but these aren't things that we can afford to spend, even if you agree with them. Because it's not money we have in the bank, it's all borrowed money, Mr. Speaker. And so where did we start? Well, the White House laid out a number of things. But they looked at that USAID program. They didn't gut the whole thing. But they said there are a number of things that are being done that just don't represent the values of the United States and are being done in foreign countries while we don't have our fiscal house in order here in America. So how about we start there? And I know the Democrats on the other side are acting like, oh my God, the world's going to stop spinning on its axis if this spending goes away. So why don't we talk about some of the spending that will go away? Again, borrowed money, not money we just took out of the bank, money we borrowed from countries like China to spend on that is a debt to our kids. So each one of these I list, Mr. Speaker, you should ask. If you vote yes, you're finally relieving that debt burden. But if you vote no, you think it's okay to send this bill to our kids. We're not paying for it today, Mr. Speaker, but our kids would if we keep doing it. If the other side votes no, they want to keep borrowing money from our children to spend $1 million on voter ID in Haiti. The same party that doesn't want voter ID in America calls it racist. Wants to fund voter ID in Haiti. $6 million for net zero cities in Mexico. I know some of their best supporters are waving a Mexican flag in an American city right now, and they support those efforts. Most Americans don't, Mr. Speaker. $3 million for Iraqi Sesame Street. The minority leader held up a Sesame Street character here on the floor, as if Sesame Street's somehow going to go away. I was just watching a commercial on TV yesterday where the Cookie Monster was actually doing an advertisement for Netflix because a private company is paying money to run Sesame Street. It's not going away. It's doing just fine, very lucrative. What will go away is some of the far-left radical views that are being espoused. You can, by the way, when this goes away at NPR, you can still turn on about 6 or 7 other channels and get the same far-left radical views, but they're all going to be private companies, Mr. Speaker, not taxpayer-funded entities. If somebody wants to pay money to go on one of their services that they stream or get over the top or however they get their digital content, they can still do that. And there are a lot of options, never been more options. Some people joke that they buy their services for their cable or whatever else they get, and that there's 200 channels, and they might only watch 4 or 5 of them. There is still going to be a plethora of options for the American people, but if they're paying their hard-earned dollars to go get content, why should your tax dollars go to only one thing that the other side wants to promote? Let everybody compete on a fair basis. So, you know, they can still watch Sesame Street in Iraq, but let the Iraqi people pay for it, not the taxpayers of the United States, of America's children. Today's taxpayers aren't paying for it because it's all borrowed money. $2.1 million for climate resilience in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and East Africa. $500,000 for electric buses in Rwanda. Rwanda's more than free to go buy all the electric buses they want or diesel buses. Why should the taxpayers of America be borrowing money from our children to buy electric buses for Rwanda? $33,000 for being LGBTQI in the Caribbean. Taxpayer money that a no vote today says is more important than strengthening a program like Social Security. I say not. $643,000 for LGBTQI plus programs in the Western Balkans. Borrowed money. $567,000, Mr. Speaker, for LGBTQI plus programs in Uganda. $5.1 million to strengthen the, quote, resilience of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and queer global movement. Not sure what that global movement is. They can continue that movement in some other way, but just not with the taxpayer dollars of the United States of America's children. Again, there's no bank account that $5.1 million came out of. It's all borrowed money that a no vote says is more important than strengthening Social Security. $135 million in contributions to the World Health Organization, which we all saw during COVID was the mouthpiece for the Chinese Communist Party. I would imagine if we stop this $135 million funding, the CCP may pick it up because they were regurgitating their talking points during COVID. So at some point, Mr. Speaker, the question we've all got to answer is, number one, do you believe in fiscal responsibility? And maybe some people have other priorities than these they'd like to defund. But if you think these are all things that are worth borrowing money from our children to fund, then that's what the no vote represents. If you think it's time we start somewhere, and here's the place to start, not to finish, just the beginning, to finally start getting control over spending and respecting those families who are working hard, who are working 2 shifts at the diner to pay taxes on tips that will soon go away if our One Big Beautiful Bill passes, or somebody who's working overtime because you want to send your kid to college and you find out this is where your taxpayer dollars are going and you're disgusted and say, when will somebody do something about it? Today's the day to do something about it. Talk is cheap. Put the action on the floor. Let's finally get control over spending. In a small way, start a bigger picture towards a balanced budget, but it starts here. Vote yes, get this done, and let's keep moving forward to strengthen this great country. With that, I urge a yes vote and yield back, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized. She reserves. Gentlewoman from Connecticut.
Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Doggett.
Gentleman is recognized.
Where lies are king, the truth is the enemy. Institutions that spread knowledge are defamed as enemies of the people. NPR and PBS are targeted here today precisely because they are so good at delivering the truth. Like millions, I tune in to both of them daily. Trump tweets radical left monsters that so badly hurt our country. What hurts Trump are facts when he demands flattery. This attempt to quash thorough, objective NPR and PBS reporting is a sign of Trump's weakness, of his drive toward tyranny. Trump doesn't want a country of engaged, informed Americans. He prefers those who salute on command, like for his North Korean-style, taxpayer-funded, wasteful $45 million birthday bash this Saturday. Reject these dangerous DOGE cuts and defend the right of the American people to know. I yield back.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities toward the president. Gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves.
Reserve.
Gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock.
Mr. Speaker, this is the first of what needs to be many rescission bills stopping the waste of public funds. The absurd expenditures the majority leader just listed speak volumes about the scandalous corruption and carelessness of a bloated government. Every dollar comes from working American families struggling to pay both their bills and their taxes. Now, this waste is enabled by 2 classes of expenditures that we should forswear forever. One is grants, cash handouts to political favorites with little accountability or oversight, whether directly or through agencies like USAID. The other is subsidies that replace the judgment of consumers with that of politicians, distorting the flow of capital from its highest and best use. As we express our outrage at this waste and take this first step to claw it back, let us remember that Congress approved all of it, and it's time that we repented before we bankrupt our country. I yield back.
Gentleman from Michigan reserves.
Reserve, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Byer.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, people will die. And that's not hyperbole, it's reality. When you cut PEPFAR, which is the signature program of President George W. Bush, created to eradicate the AIDS epidemic, people will die. And OMB Director Russ Vought confirmed that the bill cuts PEPFAR by $400 million. When you cut funding to family planning programs, tens of millions will be denied modern contraceptives, resulting in millions of unintended pregnancies, tens of thousands of preventable pregnancy-related deaths. When you cut funding for international peacekeeping and to people escaping violence, people will die. When we reduce development assistance that ensures people have access to food and clean water, people will die. When you cut money to Ukraine for food security and energy grid resilience, more people will die in their war against the Russian invasion. USAID is our strongest soft power vehicle. And even if you don't care about how many people will die, it's one of our strongest assets to saving money by decreasing military conflict risk. And I also want to speak up for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, critical kids' educational programs. This bill is bad for America. People will die, and I yield back.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I can't take the fear-mongering anymore. Let me correct the truth with the other half of the truth. We're talking about PEPFAR, $4.4 billion, and we're talking about cutting less than 1% from that whole entire program. We're not saying that you have to cut AIDS. Perhaps let me tell you what other programs we could cut for the American people. You're saying that people are going to die because you want to cut the funding. We're not saying that, so how about we do this? How about we cut $3 million for circumcisions, vasectomies, and condoms in Zambia? How about that? How about we cut $5.1 million that is used to strengthen the resilience of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and queer global movements? I got an idea. How about we, instead of spending it there, how about we spend that money and invest in the American healthcare? I could go on, but this fear-mongering has absolutely got to stop. With that, I'm going to yield 1 minute to my friend, Mr. Smucker.
Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair. The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this bill represents a tiny fraction of the total we are spending annually. It's a tiny fraction, 0.2%, 1/5 of a percent of what President Biden added to the debt over the last 4 years. Yet Democrats are saying that these savings are cruel, that they literally said this will destroy America as we know it. No one outside of the Beltway will take them seriously. Have my Democrat colleagues even looked at what's in this bill before attacking? Is it cruel to suggest that American taxpayers shouldn't have to pay $60,000 to celebrate DEI in the Netherlands, or $30,000 to foster, quote, queer feminist discourse in Albania? Is it cruel to cut a program spending $700,000 to expand fruit and jam sales in Honduras? By the way, speaking of jam, my last name is Smucker, but even I know that's a bad deal.
Time's expired.
Mr. Speaker, I can tell you what will destroy America as we know it, and that is this unsustainable debt that we are passing on to our kids and grandkids. I urge my colleagues to support this rescissions package, and I yield.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman from Connecticut.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman.
The gentleman is recognized.
Last month, Secretary Rubio responded to me and said no one had died as a result of the gutting of USAID. But Boston University School of Public Health shows us that 300,000 people have died already because they were cut off from food and medicine for tuberculosis, AIDS, and malaria. And the Center for Global Development says that 3.3 million preventable deaths will occur because of the gutting of USAID. But they won't just die there, Americans will die too. Because when malaria, tuberculosis, and AIDS infect anyone in the world, those diseases replicate, they mutate, and they migrate back here in more virulent forms. Evan Anzu, a 5-year-old boy, was cut off from his HIV medications in February and died. He is the first to die at the hands of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Mr. Speaker, I ask that we rise. I ask unanimous consent that we observe a full minute of silence in the memory of this child victim. I ask unanimous consent.
Has expired.
Let us remember Evan Anzu.
Gentlewoman from Connecticut.
I reserve.
Reserves. Gentlewoman from Michigan.
I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gill.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If Fox News or Talk Radio or any other conservative media outlet came to me and asked us if we should provide them with taxpayer-funded handouts, I would say no, and I believe that most of my colleagues would as well. I certainly think that far-left propaganda outlets like NPR should be defunded. Remember, this is an outlet that believes writing articles about fat phobia and queer animals constitute serious journalism. They have the right to say whatever they want to, but they do not have the right to our tax dollars. And to my colleagues who say that this is only a small part of our budget, I would ask them, what outside of border security and national defense would they like to cut from our budget? They've never seen a foreign country they don't want to shower with our tax dollars or an illegal alien that they don't want to give welfare to. This is a logical first step to get our finances under control, and I urge my colleagues to vote for this rescissions bill. Thank you.
I reserve.
Gentleman from Michigan reserves. The gentleman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Magaziner.
Gentleman from Rhode Island is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, more than any other day I have been in Congress, the cruelty of the Trump administration and the Republican majority is on display. They are asking us to rubber stamp Elon Musk's cuts to PEPFAR, which saves millions of lives treating people with HIV, funding for clean water, funding to fight malaria, fighting to help people starving from famine. And Donald Trump and Republicans are doing this at the same time they're giving trillions of tax cuts to the rich. And while they're at it, they're also cutting educational programming for children like PBS. Why are they doing this? Not to reduce the deficit, because this $9 billion is a fraction of the tax cuts they are trying to pass for billionaires. This is the richest people in the world taking food and medicine away from the poorest children in the world. I have news for Elon Musk and Donald Trump and the billionaires. No matter how much money you have, no matter how many poor people you take food and medicine away from, it will not fill that hole inside of you. To my colleagues from the House, history will judge us today. You have a chance to be heroes. Vote no.
Gentlewoman from Connecticut yields. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
I reserve.
Mr. Speaker.
Reserve, sorry.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McDowell.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, today we do what lifelong bureaucrats in this town fear most. We cut their funding. For far too long, Washington bureaucrats have taken advantage of the American taxpayer, sending their hard-earned money to fund the corrupt foreign aid complex and pushing government funding for educational programs that groom our children. That stops today. The Rescissions Act of 2025 is not just a bill, it's a part of a much larger course correction. This bill rips back over $9 billion from the clutches of globalist NGOs, projects that fund radical gender ideology and the Green New Scam. The great people of North Carolina didn't send me here to manage decline. They sent me here to help President Trump usher in the new golden age. So let the left scream. Let the media moan and groan. But today, we are putting Americans first and looking out for their hard-earned tax dollars. I urge a yes vote and yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentlewoman from Michigan reserves. The gentleman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Kamla Gerdove.
Gentlewoman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this package. It is embarrassing. It is trifling. This is a funding package that Republicans actually agreed to and voted on last Congress when they were in the majority. Republicans must be missing Biden now because they actually had more influence under him than under Trump. Now Republicans are going back on their own agreement and giving up their own power with this package. The real question is, why show up here if you have an orange daddy doing your work for you? This vote actually puts every Republican on record as supporting Elon's attack on democracy when even Steve Bannon said that Elon and Doge found no waste. With this package, Republicans are one step closer to a country that looks more like the adversaries we profess to oppose. Americans will be left to clean up this mess, and we will have zero standing in the international community, and we will have zero claim to global leadership while you all have killed off Elmo. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this trash, and I yield back.
I reserve.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentlewoman from Michigan yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I never realized Elmo was more important to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle than the American people. But anyways, I yield 1 minute to my friend, Mr. Musser from Pennsylvania.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank Chairwoman McClain for her leadership. Mr. Speaker, during President Trump's first term, we had pro-growth policies, pro-growth economy, and tax revenues growth. Then, even after COVID, the Biden administration accelerated the deficit with unchecked spending, caused the deficit to double, which increased service on the debt from $400 billion in 2019 to nearly $1 trillion last year. That's why this package takes steps to rein in irresponsible agencies. Some have been taken over by ideologues doing things that are simply not in the interest of the American people. Maybe USAID has done some good things, but they've also done many things that were totally inappropriate. Agencies like this need to be defunded or reformed. The American people aren't going to put up with it anymore. To that end, why is the government still funding public television and radio when most people have hundreds of channels to get their news and information from? And these stations are some of the most partisan stations out there. Can you imagine, it was stated earlier, if a conservative station was funded, the left would have screamed, vilified, and exterminated it a long while ago. Mr. Speaker, let's pass this rescissions package and codify President Trump's spending reductions into law and save our country along the way. I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman from Michigan reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized and has 30 seconds remaining.
I reserve.
Gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to Representative Boebert from the state of Colorado.
Gentlewoman from Colorado is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support today of H.R. 4, President Trump's big, beautiful rescissions package. This bill slashes radical foreign aid at the State Department, USAID, and the U.S. Institute of Peace for woke gender ideology and equity nonsense that mocks American values. Why are we bankrolling wokeism abroad when ranchers and small business owners in my district are struggling? H.R. 4 defunds PBS and NPR's biased media circus. For years, taxpayers have been forced to subsidize a public media system that's less about informing and more about indoctrinating. To my friends across the aisle, I know you love your globalist pet projects, but the American people are fed up. The voters that sent us here are watching, and they're done seeing their dollars shipped overseas and funneled into biased media. H.R. 4 is a victory for taxpayers, and I urge its adoption. I yield.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentlewoman from Michigan reserves. Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Onder.
Gentleman from Missouri is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 4 to codify President Trump's Doge tax cuts. Americans have been awash in unsustainable debt and waste, and Americans have known it long before DOGE began its work. But what many didn't realize is just how bad the problem is. $14 million in cash vouchers for illegals at the southern border, $3.3 million for cash for being LGBTQ in the Caribbean, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, and $1.5 million to promote LGBTQ employment in Serbia, not to mention the hundreds of millions wasted on the politically biased government media known as NPR. Enough is enough. We must rein in Washington's reckless spending and hold bureaucrats accountable. I urge my colleagues to join me and put Americans and fiscal sanity first in this, what I hope will be the first of many rescission bills. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. The gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, how much time remains on each side?
The gentlewoman has 8 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Webster.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the American people are called on today to do what they had been asked to do from their elected officials, and that is cut waste, fraud, and abuse. Today we deliver. Together with President Trump, we are eliminating billions of dollars of spending that's wasteful spending on left-wing organizations who mock millions of Americans. We'll also eliminate wasteful spending on radical programs in lands far, far away that do not put America first. I consistently voted to cut the spigot of spending, and I'll continue to do that, continue the record, and pass this bill today. I urge my colleagues to do the same. Yield back.
Reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from West Virginia, Mr. Moore.
Gentleman from West Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As chairman of the RSC Rescissions Task Force, I'm proud to support this bill to codify the DOGE cuts. The American people know waste, fraud, and abuse when they see it. They want us to eliminate Democrats' radical agenda, including $5.1 million for global LGBTQ movements, $3 million for circumcisions in Zambia, and $833,000 for transgender surgeries in Nepal. This package also ensures tax dollars aren't used to weaponize media against the American people. The CEO of NPR called President Trump a fascist while claiming her network is unbiased. These outlets can be as insane as they want. They might want to check CNN's ratings before doing that. They're just not going to do it with the American taxpayer dollars anymore. This rescissions package is only the first step, and I urge my colleagues to support it. I yield back. Thank you.
Reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves.
Reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman is
Mr.
recognized.
Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Harrigan.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the American people are sick and tired of watching Washington burn through their paychecks on wasteful, ridiculous, and downright offensive projects. This rescissions package is our chance to prove that we still remember who we work for here in Washington. We're cutting $2.5 million for electric vehicles in Vietnam, $47,000 for transgender surgeries in Colombia, and nearly $10 billion for NPR, PBS, and other bloated liberal pet projects that have no place in a responsible budget. Washington acts like taxpayer dollars are theirs to waste, but they are not. Every cent belongs to the men and women who work long hours, pay their bills, and expect their government to act with a shred of discipline. This is about more than numbers. It is about trust. It's about respect, and it is about time. I urge my colleagues to pass this bill and prove that Congress can still do the right thing.
Reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves.
I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes from the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Mace. South Carolina, my apologies.
Thank you.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under President Donald Trump's leadership, this rescission package codifies $9.4 billion in DOGE cuts by canceling some of the most egregious Biden-era waste, fraud, and abuse. Here are just some of the funding we are canceling today. $4 million for sedentary migrants in Colombia. $3 million for circumcision, vasectomies, and condoms in Zambia. $5.1 million to strengthen the resilience of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and queer global movements. $3 million for Iraqi Sesame Street. $2.5 million for teaching young children how to make environmentally friendly reproductive health decisions. $833,000 for services for transgender people, sex workers, and their clients and sexual networks in Nepal. The American people are begging Congress to get off its ass and codify the DOGE cuts and stop this taxpayer-funded nonsense. Failure is not an option, and I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I'm prepared to close.
The gentlewoman reserves.
Reserves.
The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record the text of Representative Kelly's amendment.
Without objection.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, President Trump promised to bring down the cost of living. He made it worse. He is illegally stealing congressionally approved taxpayers' dollars and these are services for the American people. You want to deal with waste, fraud, and abuse? It's to deal with cutting back on the $4.5 trillion tax cut for the billionaires that the Republicans have supported and voted on. Tax cuts for billionaires and the biggest corporations. If you vote for this bill, you own every reckless cut crafted by Elon Musk. You are rubber stamping illegal cuts, and you own it. And I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. The gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to be clear. These rescissions should get bipartisan support. We, as elected officials on both sides of the aisle, have been entrusted with the hard-earned tax dollars of the American people. The duly elected President of the United States has asked this Congress to protect the American people's tax dollars. It is the least we can do. The administration has identified waste, fraud, and abuse of American taxpayer dollars. It is our responsibility as representatives to act on those abuses and rescind the money. All of us should be able to vote to eliminate $45 million in duplicative spending in the African Development Program. We should all be able to support eliminating $1.7 billion for radical gender projects in the Economic Support Fund. Every member of this chamber should be able to support a rescission of $2.5 billion in the development of assistance programs. That has bankrolled corrupt leaders in foreign countries. Mr. Speaker, the American people are watching their representatives today. Emphasis on their representatives. They are watching to see if their representatives have the courage to actually fight for them. Or will their representatives defend waste, fraud, and abuse of the bloated federal government? I can say with certainty that House Republicans will always put American people first. And I hope on the other side of the aisle, they might have the courage to join us. I encourage my colleagues to join me in voting yes on H.R. 4 so that we can take the necessary first step in rescinding the wasteful spending of the American taxpayer dollars. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields back the balance of our time. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 499, the previous question is ordered on the bill. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to rescind certain budget authority proposed to be rescinded in special messages transmitted to the Congress by the President on June 3, 2025, in accordance with Section 1012A of the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Ms. Kelly of Illinois moves to recommit the bill H.R. 4 to the Committee on Appropriations.
Pursuant to Clause B of Rule 19, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The motion is not agreed to. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those in favor of a vote for the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Proceedings will resume on questions previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order. Passage of S 331, the motion to recommit, H.R. 4. Passage of H.R. 4, if ordered, the motion to recommit, H.R. 2056, and passage of H.R. 2056, if ordered. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, remaining electronic votes will be conducted as 5-minute votes. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is to vote on passage of Senate 331, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Senate 331, an act to amend the Controlled Substances Act with respect to the scheduling of fentanyl-related substances and for other purposes.
The question is on the passage of the bill. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.